Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
It would have been more appropriate to use a cold open for this episode, considering the fact that it is hotter than the surface of the sun outside. There's some kind of bit or joke in there about scorching hot pavement, scorching hot takes on the draft preview episode, but it's for someone funnier and less cooked inside out than me. So with that, one of our biggest episodes of the year, every year, we can't wait for the day where this episode is almost an afterthought. But for now, the 2025 NHL Draft Preview episode is here. Everything, prospects, rankings, Detroit's predictions, who's in the crosshairs for them to draft, any fallers, any dark horses, anything like that. You boys ready?
Always.
Did we stop doing these when the Red Wings make the playoffs?
No, we still do them, but it's like probably 80% free agency preview by this point, and then 20%, oh yeah, here's who might be there at pick 27.
Do you know how excited I am to get absolutely dialed on the 25th best prospect in the draft?
Sign me up.
I don't even want to know who's available in the top 10. Doesn't matter.
Does not matter. Yeah, I have a few people who message me every year saying, so every year this is one of your biggest episodes because we'll post on socials. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Thanks for reminding me.
And when it isn't, we're all the better for it.
Well, until then, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, the 2025 NHL Entry Draft Preview, top to bottom, prospects, rankings, again, everything that we mentioned just earlier. We're also going to get into some league news, a little bit of the rumors, what's going on, who's available, shooting down some of the rumors that are out there, and whatever else we have time to get into before overtime. Before all that, this show is possible because of our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to join the show and join the Dub Club, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We let loose, we have fun, you get bloopers, you get cold opens, you get thoughts with Evan. It's a really great time. You're also automatically entered into all of our giveaways. In season, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, and in the offseason, we have a lot planned for our Patreon supporters. You're additionally given access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. Every year they do a mock draft and they'll light the lamp, but for the Winged Wheel Podcast Discord in season, it's a great community. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Before we jump into the preview, just some notes about how this week is going to go. Wednesday, and all of this is with the big asterisk of barring something crazy happening in terms of a trade or whatever. But this is the preview episode. Wednesday, you're going to get the final mock draft. It's going to be a roundtable with Max Bultman and Prashanth Iyer. We're also going to be doing some free agency preview in there. Friday, live stream on YouTube, youtube.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Go subscribe. We're going to be live streaming the entire first round. It's a watch along, so we're going to be giving updates, analysis, fan discussion. There's going to be giveaways, things like that. It's a great time. One of our favorite things to do every year is that live stream. And then Saturday is going to be our Patreon exclusive day 2 of the draft stream. So rounds 2 through 7, we do a big hangout with our patrons, facilitated through the Discord. So again, that's a benefit for our Patreon supporters. Saturday night, it could be late night, but you are going to get our NHL Draft review recap episode. So not just first round pick, but all picks rounds 1 through 7 for Detroit. It's our official draft recap episode. And then the plan is, again, barring anything insane happening, on Wednesday, July 2nd, I believe it is going to be our free agency recap episode because free agency opens July 1st. If things go nuclear, or as Evan likes to say,
nuclear.
It's pronounced nuclear. On July 1st, you might hear from us sooner, but the plan is that you're going to get the free agency recap episode on July 2nd. So lots to come. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Tune into the live stream. It's a great time. All right, draft preview. We're going to go, let's say, in order of Zach Egan's rankings. Let's go Red Wings prospects. We have them on wingedwheelpodcast.com/blog. Let's go that order for now. We're not going to talk about every player ranked in the first round, but let's say most of the ones that are either at the top or in Detroit's range at pick 13. Starting with Matthew Schaefer, and I'll start with you, Brad. Ironically, you don't even have Matthew Schaefer first on your own list. You have Michael Misa. But Matthew Schaefer, worthy first overall pick. How does he project for the team who gets him? Is he a guarantee to go there?
I think he'll be pretty good.
Could be pretty good.
Yeah. No, obviously a lot of what we're going to say about all the prospects today has been beaten to death by us and everybody else over the previous few months, but it all bears repeating as the day gets near. Schaefer's upside, he's that do-it-all defenseman. He can defend well, he can skate well, he can move the puck well, he provides offense. He's not huge, but he's also not sub 6 foot either. The big risk with him is he only played 17 regular season games in the OHL this year. Handful in the World Junior before he got hurt. So the sample size is small, which means it is not bulletproof. He might not be what people think he is because of sample size. He just had a hot stretch and everybody's like, yep, this is the guy. Now he had a really good draft -1 year as well. So I'm not going to necessarily say that's likely. On talent, he's a very worthwhile first overall pick. Not in the Dahlin, Austin Matthews tier, but probably better than the Owen Power, Uri Slavkovsky years. And yeah, I mean, teams trip over themselves for a do-it-all defenseman who can skate these days.
I understand the whole Misa should be first thing in some people's mind, including yours, Brad. It's a lot closer for me than I think what the consensus is, but you can't really deny based on everything that you said that Schaefer has earned this. I agree he's played 17 games, but I also think had he played more, he'd be demonstrating more with what he's able to do. So Schaefer worthwhile, at least consideration, if not the consensus for the number 1 pick there.
Yeah, there's a very clear top 2 in this draft, and in my opinion, it's whatever flavor you're feeling that day or at draft time. You could go either way. So if we're gonna have Matthew Schaefer at number 1, I am right on board with that. I think he's very worthy, and the sky's kind of the limit with him. It will be very interesting to see his development path going forward.
Michael Misa, ranked number 2 by lots of folks, ranked number 1 by you, Brad. How's Michael Misa project as a player? Some comparables, and what could he be for a team in terms of, top line center, superstar, franchise talent? What's the ceiling for him?
I think he's a first line center, but I think there's going to be a lot of debates with him, much like Larkin, of is he the first line center that's going to win you a Stanley Cup? Do you need 2 Michael Misas to win a Stanley Cup? But he's, in my estimation, going to be a top 20 center in the NHL. He's got size, he's got skill, he's got ridiculous hockey IQ. He can score, he can shoot a puck. We talk about do-it-all defenseman. He's a do-it-all center. And I think he's not the only guy I'm going to talk about in the top 10 that has this issue. I think he's a victim of over-scouting because he was an exceptional status player that got into the OHL at 15. So even though he's a true 17-year-old, and he's not a late birthday, but he's in his 3rd OHL year, and you see the numbers and they're eye-popping. I think he was close to 140 points or something insane like that this year. And people are still like, maybe he's a winger at the next level. Maybe he's not that dynamic. I'm telling you, if he only had 2 years in the OHL and put up these numbers, I don't think they'd have the same debates about him. I think there's just been so much exposure about him as an exceptional status. And let's not forget, Saginaw won the Memorial Cup last year, so he was on the front of everybody's mind for almost the entire season. I just think he got nitpicked because I think the guy is a star in the making. He's got almost every trait you would want in a number 1 center. And yeah, he was a little inconsistent this year, but so was Saginaw as a team. And I feel like that issue was a little overblown. But yeah, there's just not much to dislike about Michael Misa's game.
If you were the Red Wings and you had the first overall pick, what would you do? Because you have probably the 2 most ideal players there, ranked 1 and 2, and Schaefer, the left shot defenseman, potentially top pair defenseman alongside Seider forever. And then you have Michael Misa, who is the heir apparent to being your top line center and maybe even the person who's going to bump Larkin down in the future. Not a problem that the Red Wings have, but it's an interesting thought experiment of which way you'd go.
I know what way I'd go.
I lean that way as well in terms of Misa, and we're going to talk later about, what are the Islanders going to do? Because they probably are at least interested in taking Hagens, the hometown kid, and that has a history. Like, that team has a history of players wanting to leave because, you know, Tavares wanted to go to Toronto and the whole pajamas thing. Like, imagine the storyline there. They draft first. And are you going to really skip over Misa and Schaefer to take Hagens? It's going to be a tough sell, so you might see some trades there as well. We'll get to that later, though. Let's talk Anton Frondell, a guy who's now getting some more attention as potentially someone who can go third. We'll see if Chicago wants to go that direction. Probably a guy who is maybe a little bit overscouted as well, or the consistency is a question, but who's Frondell as a prospect to you?
Frondell, Lundell, a lot of comparables there.
Don't mess up Evan like that.
Let us have our fun, Ryan.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a mock draft coming up. I'm not saying we need to manufacture.
Are you ready?
I'll need to get a spreadsheet going to make sure I track who's already off the board.
My prediction, Evan's going to make an exceptional, well-researched, well-laid-out spreadsheet, and he's accidentally going to type in Lundell.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens when the lights are bright, you know?
Yeah. Again, Frondell, to me, is in theory, this is an exceptional player and well worthy of a third overall pick. He's big, excellent skill, great hockey IQ, wicked shot. I mean, again, he's projected as a 200-foot center. He played wing most of this year, but the talent is so obvious that he still gets projected as a center, and yet some people still want to put Misa to the wing. I don't understand this process at all, but I get where people are coming with Frondell on that one. Problem with Frondell is the consistency was a real issue. Like, he put up pretty good numbers in the Allsvenskan, better than other similar caliber players in their draft year, but albeit small sample sizes, in the tournaments and all the exposure he got with his own age group this year, he was painfully mediocre. You'd think with his level of talent, when he gets to the U18s or anything like that, he would speed bag the competition, and it didn't happen. He was underwhelming every time. And I don't know what to make of that, because he was good in the Allsvenskan. And maybe he's one of those guys that just works better off better players, which is very possible. We've seen players like that in the past. But yeah, I can't wrap my head around him fully, just because in the handful of games I've watched of him, I never saw him dominate. I didn't see a bad player, and I didn't see a lot of red flags, but I never saw him dominate. And if we're talking about a top 5 pick, every once in a while, you got to grab a game and go, this one's mine. I'm dragging my team to a win, kicking and screaming, and I just didn't see it. Like, again, all the tools, all the traits, the frame. In theory, this is, top 6 center all day, every day. But I don't know. I'm hoping I just caught the wrong games.
I like Frondell. I think the talent is there. I think he plays the game in the kind of way that will make him really attractive to GMs. Like, doesn't play small, uses his frame. Not the biggest guy in the world, but he does have a pro-size frame. Like, the skill is there. The same questions live for me in terms of how consistent can he be. I completely agree with what you're saying, Brad, but you can't ignore it. This, to me, is the first indicator, though, of the fact that the top end of this draft, at least pre-draft, we'll see in 5 years or however long, the skill is lesser than maybe previous years, or it's not a strong top end of the draft, because I think Frondell is probably closer to the bottom of the top 10 in some other years. But I mean, that's how it is this year. I don't know that I have him third, but he is definitely a guy worth taking in the top 5 in my mind. 3 is a hard sell for me over, a Hagens or a Denoyer or whoever else. So we'll see. But if he's able to break through those consistency issues, or they're not actually a problem as he moves through the ranks, then someone's going to get a bona fide top 3 pick all day, every day.
Yeah, he's one of the early players in this draft where I've seen them kind of all over the place in the top 10, and there's clearly some subjectivity to what people think he'll project to at the NHL level. But you guys are right. Like, if you watch his highlights, you're like, this guy's a top 4 pick at all time. And then you start to get into the consistency issues, and you start asking, like, where is this game in, game out, shift in, shift out? So there can be some concerns. I like you guys, I like every aspect of his game. I think he's got one of the best shots in the draft. Like, you're going to make a good career out of it if you can put the puck in the net. People will overlook a lot of The Red Wings overlook Daniel Sprong's inconsistencies for a 20-goal scorer. So, yeah, I like Anton Frundell. Probably too rich for me at 3 as well, but I like his game and I like his traits a lot.
All right, we're going to start to move through these a bit quicker until we get into like the Red Wings range of players. What I'm actually going to do is also, I think Corey Prummond does a great job of like projecting what might actually happen. So I'll link to his article, but he does mock draft. And so he had in his 7-round mock, I think he did, which is an insane exercise, Brady Martin, 4th to the Utah Mammoth. So Brady Martin as a player, I mean, this is a guy who we, at the initial phases of the prospect profiles, talked about a lot. And then he is this year's Ryan Leonard, and everyone's going to be saying Sam Bennett quickly rose. He's not going to be in Detroit's range, but who's Brady Martin as a player?
If you're taking Brady Martin in the top 10, you are betting he's going to be Sam Bennett. Otherwise, don't know if the talent there is high-end enough to justify it. But I say this lovingly, and I'm sure he's suffering today because he's probably working on a farm like 10 minutes from here as we speak. He is a tough SOB, and he's a prick on the ice. And those are both compliments.
Mm-hmm.
You can see why people believe this guy could be Sam Bennett, Tom Wilson. That the skill is there. It's legit. It's not this guy's a physical, high pace, high compete player, so he must be great. No, this guy can actually play hockey. Not to the skill level of other guys in the same range, but close enough that it is absolutely worth the conversation. But like when you looked at, the scout polls and all the player polls that a lot of the draft analysts have put out, like this guy's number 1 with a bullet on all who's the hardest worker, who's got the most compete. It's him every time because the motor is unreal. And if he's a center at the NHL level who can put up 50 to 60 points a year and just truck guys consistently, like if Tom Wilson goes into redraft, do you think he's ever getting out of the top 5?
No.
And that's the hope for Brady Martin. That's the bet you're making if you're taking him high in this draft.
Caleb Denoyer. And that's going to be an interesting one because coming out of the queue, are you going to be trusting?
Not interested.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's already a do-not
Move on to
draft
the
for
next.
Evan. But Caleb Denoyer, I see some comparisons to maybe like a Berkeley Catton in terms of like, this is as center right below the premium center right at the top of the draft kind of thing. Not comparing the players exactly, but do you think he goes in that range, and who is he as a player?
I think he's a dark horse to go 3.
Really?
I think that's as high as he can go in this draft. Because we talked about compete with Brady Martin. That's one of Denoyer's biggest traits. He's the do-it-all center, the 200-foot pain in the ass with skill. There is the risk of, but it's the Q. But he won playoff MVP. He was one of the league's top scorers. And he did it with, I think the injury report came out at the end of the year, 2 bad wrists and a bad shoulder, some of it dating all the way back to November. I mean, if you can barely hold your stick and you're putting up those points, I think that nullifies the Q argument.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he was fully healthy, he might have torched that league even more. So, yeah, again, one of those guys, there's nothing to not like about his game. It's just how high is the offense at the NHL level because you can't trust production at the Q level.
Jake O'Brien, who that's probably like the pie in the sky for Red Wings fans of like a potential top 6 center of the future, who's not going to fall out to pick 13. But if you can trade up or if the impossible happens, you're looking at him. But who's Jake O'Brien as a player, and is he worthy of the top 10 projection?
Oh, he's a top 10 pick all day. I've actually seen a lot of mocks where he has been mocked to Boston, and there's something about him being the Beantown Beanpole, which feels really appropriate because he's 6'1", 6'2", and 170 pounds. He weighs less than me. If you believe that he can actually fill out his frame, you are tripping over yourself to get up to the podium to take this guy, because the only concern about him right now is he going to hold up at the NHL level. Because he might be the most creative player in the draft. His playmaking is elite. His shot's pretty good. He can move. He can distribute. He can transport the puck. Whatever you need him to do. And he's a center and he's big, height-wise. But is it one of those guys he's never going to pack on weight? Or can he fill out? There's a lot of comparisons to Elias Pettersson for better or worse. So I'm sorry, Evan, I know you're not trading up for him.
No,
The
we're
expensive one. But a lot of the draft comparables were the same, and then Elias Pettersson popped off for a 100-point season in the NHL. That path is possible for Jake O'Brien. Little too reliant on the power play this year, which brings up some concerns. He did have Nick Lardis to play with on said power play, who it feels like every time he passed the puck to that guy, he wired it past the goalies. So are the stats inflated, or was he getting easy goals because of great passes? You be the judge. But I'm a huge, huge fan of the hockey IQ. I'm a huge fan of the skill. I'm a huge fan of the creativity. If he gets past 8, if you're Detroit, you're calling everybody between you and your pick to get up and get him. Like that would be an absolute must attempt.
Isn't it Buffalo at 9?
Buffalo's at 9.
So there you go. Maybe a possibility.
And then there's a couple other pieces you'd be happy to peel off Buffalo as well. Speak of guys where you might trade up if he's available. What about Roger McQueen? And this is, big, like genuinely very big, and still has more frame to fill out. I think he's listed at 6'5", 6'6", and just has the back injury that has people concerned. But talent-wise, projected closer to the top than the bottom of the top 10.
I hate talking about this guy because there's, on the one end, the toolkit. You can see a reality where he's Tage Thompson, a 6'4", 6'5" center who can stick handle in a phone booth, has tons of creativity, great playmaker, wicked shot. But he's 6'4", 6'5" with a back problem. That's nerve-wracking. And Caden Lindstrom did him no favors because it was a lot, not necessarily the same injury, but back injury going into the draft. Everybody says it's fine, and then he doesn't play a whole year. Man, if I'm an NHL GM and I'm picking in the top 10, oh boy, do I have a hard time taking that risk. Like, he's basically the grocery stick of the draft for me, because once you get past a certain level, the talent gap between him and everybody behind him's so wide that you just take the risk. But when you're in the same range as the Jake O'Briens, the Brady Martins, I don't know if either of those guys are going to be as good as Roger McQueen if he stays healthy. But there's so much less risk attached to them that for a minor downgrade, you'll take the certainty. I don't know if I trade up a lot for McQueen, but like you'd consider it. But he's also one of these guys, because of the back injury, he might just fall to Detroit.
And honestly, like I've been talking a lot. I mentioned to you guys pre-show. I'm pretty set on if there's an opportunity to improve the team now, could be for a pick in the future or something like that. But if you can get a player now, move pick 13 this year, because I'm not a big believer in pick 13 being as good as pick 13 in other years. But Roger McQueen would be one of those situations where, as long as your staff, your medical team, your amateur scouts are not throwing up red flags, that is a hell of a way to get a lot more talent than you otherwise should have at pick 13. So, because you're right, Roger McQueen, you do all day, every day. There's not a team in the league that wouldn't love this guy could be Tage Thompson. So I'm keeping a keen eye on him. And I agree. I would also pay, not like mortgaging a ton, but at least some to move up a few picks if you believed in him.
Really got to do your homework on this one. And it has nothing to do with the on-ice ability. It has everything to do with medical history and becoming a back expert over the past month or so, to make sure that if this is a guy you're going to draft, that you've mitigated the risk as best you can.
Now, next up, I don't think is actually the 8th best prospect, and he could end up going 8th, but he could end up going first overall based on who's drafting, and that's James Hagens. Such an interesting player to watch, and if he was a couple inches taller, I don't think anyone's having this conversation. But James Hagens as a prospect, where does he rank? Is he worthy of potential first overall, or could you see him go as low as 8 or worse?
Here's victim number 2 of over-scouting. If I told you, without any context, historic U18 production, historic production at the NTDP, as a true freshman in the NCAA, played on one of the top teams, was the first-line center and a point per game.
I think you're talking about like Paul Correa or somebody like that.
Like, you're talking about a first overall pick, maybe second overall pick all day. and then you say the most hated line by every NHL GM. Yeah, but he's sub 6 foot. Like, if this guy was a year younger and he was coming off his previous season, like, he's there with Schaefer and Misa. Now, again, because of how good of a season they had and the size discrepancy between him and Misa, he is probably truly number 3 on this list, at least for me.
Late birthday, Hagens.
Yeah. So, but like, I just don't get it. I've seen mocks where he's going 8-9, and I can't wrap my head around it. On pure skill and ability, just talent, he might be the most talented player in the draft. Full stop. Now, because he's sub 6 foot, he's not going to have the physical game. His defensive game isn't great, but it's good for somebody his size, which obviously Misa and Schaefer will always have an advantage on him over that because that's just the nature of the game. And much as I hate it, size does matter, and you do have to factor it in. But I see a very real reality where 10 years from now, we're looking back and Hagens is leading this draft class in scoring. And everybody's wondering why. If he goes 3rd overall, fine. If he goes like 7th, 8th, like this is the guy that if he's there at 6, 7, and I'm Detroit, I'm calling and I'm offering a lot. And I know people are going to roll their eyes. Oh, another small forward. Like, listen, guys, how long do you think Patrick Kane's sticking around for? Even DeBrincat's get like, they're not going to be that small in their top 6 forever. I look at opportunities for trade ups. We talked about it with O'Brien. It's where is the value surplus?
Mm-hmm.
Hagens getting out of the top 5 is massive value surplus. And based on a lot I'm hearing, I would almost call it likely he gets out of the top 5.
If that happens, I think he's one of the only guys in this draft where you can pick the spot where you're like, there are going to be multiple players ahead of him who don't perform as well as him in the rest of their careers.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. So I'm a big fan. I understand the size concerns, but like, I feel like he's been overscouted and people are just nitpicking at this point.
People are kind of looking at, the flavor of the week or who they think is impressive to them, and they have fresher eyes on some of these guys. Everybody's been watching James Hagens for the past 3 years. They're looking for something new out of him. I mean, he keeps doing impressive things. He was a point per game freshman this year in the NCAA. Like, yeah, I don't really get it either. And I think in almost every single mock I looked at, he was like in the 5 to 8 range, which is fine, I guess, but I don't see a whole lot of weaknesses to his game, and I see a lot of elite abilities. And you don't have a point per game season in the NCAA by accident. Like, this guy's a legit prospect. For me, he's top 3, top 4. Like, yeah, the mocks have just been very crazy on him, and which is unfortunate.
Porter Martone, another guy who's, on a lot of people's list would be ranked a lot higher, but maybe just a victim of positionality. Skating is a concern for some people, but quickly, who's Porter Martone as a prospect, and do you see him falling that low?
I'm not going to say he's a victim of overscouting because he is a late birthday. This is his 3rd tour through. I think there's bad habits teams have in the draft, and we talk about it a lot. One, teams will massively reach for positional preference, so I think the fact that this is a very center-heavy draft is hurting Martone because he's a winger. I think he's getting miscast a little bit because he's a skill player. He's not a power forward. He uses his body at times well, but because he's so huge, you expect him to be a power forward, and it's not him. He's a high-skill guy, and he's really damn skilled. Super creative, great playmaker, can rip a puck. I've seen him, some of his highlight reels are insane. Like, when this guy decides to turn it on, it's, oh my God. I wouldn't call it consistency issues, but there are questions about his compete, which I get, which is going to bump him down boards. But yeah, I feel like if this guy was a center, we're talking top 5 all day, but it's the world we live in.
Yeah, I think talent-wise, this is a guy where if he goes that low, whatever team that has the opportunity to draft him would be ecstatic. And we're saying the same thing over and over, but I think it does hold true for him as well, which is you have the opportunity to move up to grab Martone, then you feel a lot better about what you're walking away from in this draft. But I think if someone has Martone in their lap, they'd have to be really compelled to move off that pick. Now, we're getting a lot closer to Detroit's range here. I think any one of these guys that we're about to mention could potentially be the guy that Detroit has an opportunity for at 13. Let's say number 10 in this draft, this mock that Corey put out, Radim Mertka. I personally think the 6'6" right shot defenseman is likely to go higher than this, but it could go this low. And who's Radim Mertka? Is he worth a top 10 pick or higher?
Doesn't matter whether or not he's worth it. He's a 6'6" defenseman with skill who can skate. He's going in the top 10. Like, just the unicorn aspect of it. I don't think he's exceptional at anything. I will classify it for his size. His skating could be considered exceptional. I don't see any elite traits coming out of him, but I don't see any giant red flags either. Can move a puck, can defend well, can gap well, smart enough to make the plays he needs to make. Just very good at everything, but in a 6'6" right shot frame. Like, that's always enticing.
Yeah, just frame-wise, like Red Wings fans will be acutely familiar with why GMs will be enamored with him. How many times have you seen a big-bodied Red Wings defenseman in Seider or Edvinsson? Let's say they get beat or they get stepped around and they just use their reach to reclaim the play. Like, that's huge. Mertka's not really known as someone who uses his body in a massive way, but neither do Seider or Edvinsson really. Edvinsson's a little bit more mean than Seider. They both can lay big hits, but that's not the calling card of their game. So Radim Mertka, I'm not going to call him like a budget version of them, but yeah, he's like a do-it-all. You hope if he lands that he's a bolt-on, minute-munching, big-body defenseman who's going to help you, especially when times get tough and doesn't have the weakness of being a small player. And the right shot helps, right? So you don't have to be exceptional. All those things are going to add up to a lot of stock value for GMs.
He might be the first guy in the draft where it's like a team drafts positionality over best player available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe you can argue that, a guy who has good mobility and can make a good pass and play in all three zones at 6'6" is the best player available, but I think he'll certainly be a top 10 contender, especially with the lack of other top 10 potential defensemen in this draft. The way the boards have sort of shook out, like, if Schaefer goes at 1, are we going to see a huge run on forwards and no defense until 11, 12 and onwards? I just don't think that's realistic. So fact that he's right-handed, big, pretty good at moving for his size, I think there's going to be a team that reaches for him in the top 10.
Kasper Aitchison is another name that this is firmly within Red Wings territory at this point. A guy who I think will get more attention from teams ahead of Detroit, so I wouldn't call it likely that he's there, but it's not like a 70-30 thing. I think like 55-45 maybe if you had to handicap it here. But Kasper Aitchison, who plays with that edge, he has that kind of grind to him. Is he the same as every other defenseman in the range? No, but I think there's a case to be made for like him or Mertka or Jackson Smith, and I'm sure a lot of teams have different variations of that order on the board. So who's Aitchison and he on your list for the Red Wings?
The apex predator. I love that quote about him. He is, again, another one of those players like Frondell, in theory, the defenseman everybody wants. He's got good offense, can skate, can move the puck, and he just kills people. Open ice check, along the boards, in a fight, doesn't matter. He kills people.
Yeah.
The hockey IQ is the big question with him. The decision-making is, as the pace picks up at the NHL, is he going to keep up? And he's only like 6'1", so he's not massive. So when he gets away from junior players, is he going to be that apex predator? Is he going to have the same physical impact at the NHL level? And I have very legitimate questions about that. The toolkit's intriguing. The hockey IQ is worrying. The mentality is what every hockey fan should dream of. Just that mean streak, that competitiveness. You love it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the way he approaches the game of hockey. But I have very real concerns that at the NHL level, he's not going to be the type of player he is now to the same level. So I think he's still a worthy first half of the first round pick, but I don't know if I know in my mind he's not a top 10 pick, but yeah, he's kind of hovering around that Detroit range.
Aitchison for me is like, you're accepting what you're going to get at 13. Like if he's who Detroit takes, you're not, of course he's not going to be at the same level he is now at the NHL level. But if you can get a guy who can have top 4 minutes or top 4 adjacent minutes and play with that kind of edge and that compete and be at all an apex predator, like if the opposing team is thinking about what Keishon Aitchison is doing on the ice, then that's worthy of a 13th overall pick, right? Like this isn't pick 6 or pick 4 or even pick 9 of years past. So you're going to have to take a little bit of a hit, especially in a perceived weaker draft from the value you're getting. So, I mean, same as the other defensemen we've talked about or will talk about, you have a guy just contributing in the middle of your lineup day in, day out. That's worthwhile for what the Red Wings are doing. And so with that context, I like him. I agree. The hockey sense isn't to the point where it's inspiring you for, the notion that he's going to put it all together at the NHL level and be a top-end performer. But I think the way he plays the game, he has a really good shot of coming in and being a Trouba light or even a Trouba or whoever you want to compare him to. So, yeah, he's in that bucket for me for the Red Wings.
I think in a vacuum, if the question was, would you want Keishon Aitchison at 13 and on the Red Wings? I would say, yeah, absolutely. I think he brings something, an element to the Red Wings that they're sorely lacking. They need a real sort of bread and butter lunch pail guy who's gonna, be tough to play against. But I think where I've cooled on him a bit is everybody else in the draft. When I step out and look at some of the other forwards, even some of the other defensemen, I find them more intriguing in terms of prospects and long-term projectability in terms of high-end offense or high-end defense than him. So, like I said, would I be happy if the Red Wings took him? Absolutely, because I think they need a guy like that. But with how the draft's sort of shaking out and the talent that's evolving around him, I think there's better options, but I really like the prospect.
All right, next defenseman here before we take a quick break, Jackson Smith. Talk about other defensemen who are available, and we profiled him recently, and a guy who hasn't gotten as much attention as Aitchison, but definitely, I mean, there's guaranteed to be people who have him ahead of Aitchison or maybe even Mertka. Does Jackson Smith project to you as someone who's a better fit?
I think so, just because of the toolkit. There's some dynamic elements to his game with the puck on his stick. He can just make plays plainly that Aitchison and Mertka can't. And the decision making's a little questionable at times, but I think it's better than an Aitchison's in terms of hockey IQ. Wasn't the most consistent year, wasn't quite as dominant as you would hope, but still really, really good. You can see this guy quarterbacking a power play at the NHL level. You can see this guy being a plus value player with the puck on his stick in transition and the offensive zone. Has to clean up the D zone, still too many brain farts there, but you can understand why a lot of people are really high on him, because if the toolkit comes together, you have a power play quarterback who can give you big minutes in the top 4. Yeah, you could also see him where he's Brendan Smith. And the range of outcomes is everywhere in between that.
And you're not going to find too many guys with tighter ranges of outcomes than that in this range to put that out there. You know what inspires me about Jackson Smith is I think the two things that I would love to see cleaned up in his game is, like you said, Brett, I think he gets caught out sometimes. And it's not in such a way where it's like his tools catch him out. It's just he's just like up in a rush or trying to create offense. Like that you can tame a tiger that way. Furthermore, I don't think his skating is bad, but I think his skating definitely has room to improve, and that is improvable, especially once he gets to the NHL level. Like without getting into the technicalities of his strides and things, like that's the kind of thing that any team will have a good skating coaches or what have you. You work on that, then he's able to get up and down the ice more efficiently, and his positionality and getting caught out doesn't happen as much. And then you get to the rest of the toolkit that Brad talked about. You have a guy who is still a big body and a little bit more projectable in my mind, who would be a nice fit in terms of having a big blue line that can move and be rangy and provide contributions at both ends of the ice. Jackson Smith could be a kind of do-it-all guy. I agree. Like, Brendan Smith is a very real possibility, and that's not even the floor. But the upper limit is I think, more than is appreciated for Jackson Smith.
I personally think he'll be the second defenseman off the board. I like a lot of what he does. And a lot of my issues with him are the brain farts. He has some... Yeah, that's my problem most of the time. He's got some liability issues in his own zone. He makes bad reads on occasion when other guys are coming with speed. But in terms of toolkit, like, he absolutely could be a power play one type defenseman at the NHL level. They just need to iron out some issues in his game. And yeah, I think he's a top 10 pick for sure.
All right, those are the first 12 so far. 13th, inherently, we'll be talking about, who Detroit could be taking. But first, we're going to take a quick break, and when we're back, more on draft, prospect, profiles, and preview. First, a word from our sponsors. Hockey offseason means summer, and summer means longer days, vacations, and somehow still way less time to cook anything decent. Between travel, barbecues, the draft, recording, you're lucky to have time for a coffee, let alone a proper meal. That's where Tempo steps in. It's been clutch for us, helping us to stay on track without living off frozen pizza. You get single-serve meals that actually taste like food, not cardboard. We've tried a bunch, but the tomato Asiago chicken and the apricot glazed chicken and rice absolutely hit the spot and are instant favorites, top of the board for us. Somehow they were that good while being done in just 3 minutes, which is about how much time Florida needed to win the series. Tempo keeps things simple. They've got over 20 options updated every week, and everything is made with real ingredients. No mystery meat, no prep, no guilt. You just heat it up, eat, and move on with your day. Perfect for when your calendar's slammed or when you're too tired to cook, but still want something that doesn't derail your nutrition. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. All right, if you're like us and coffee's basically the fuel that keeps you going, whether it's early morning podcasts, late night game rewatches, or just grinding through another rebuild, then you need to check out Coffee Cult. These guys are serious about coffee. They only use specialty grade Arabica beans from all over the world, and they actually work with their farmers to make sure every single bean is top quality. No joke, they inspect each one, and they won't roast anything that isn't excellent. The result is super flavorful and honestly superstar level coffee. And get this, they roast to order. So when you place your order at coffeecult.com, your coffee isn't sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's roasted fresh just for you, and then it's shipped out. That's as fresh as it gets. Their dark roast is a go-to. Smooth, heavy-bodied with notes of caramel and chocolate, perfect for cold mornings at the rink. Or try something a little different like the Sumatra with chocolate and brown sugar vibes. And they've got a killer lineup of single origin coffees from places like Colombia, Kenya, Brazil, you name it. Head to coffeecult.com, that's KOFFEEKULT.com, and use code WWP to get 15% off. And if you spend over $49, shipping is free in the US. That's coffeecult.com, spelled with a K. Drink better coffee. Welcome back. Victor Eklund is the name that has been mocked as the guy in the top 10 who could fall to Detroit at 13. So let's talk about him next. Are you running to the stage for Victor Eklund? How does he compare in terms of guys who are potentially reasonable for Detroit on your list, and who is he as a player?
Eklund's the one I just can't fully place. Super high intensity, wicked shot, wicked speed, all things the Red Wings covet on top of need. Lot of Seth Jarvis comparisons I've seen floating around, which if that's the comparison, hell yeah. Late birthday with pretty good production in the Allsvenskan. Don't know if I'm fully sold on him being an elite offensive player at the NHL, but I could see it. Again, you talk of range of outcomes. A lot of Seth Jarvis comparisons, sure, but I could also see him being Victor Arvidsson, which in his prime, Victor Arvidsson was great, but not Seth Jarvis. My only question is, where does he fit in with the group of Red Wings prospects and futures that they have now? Because he's pretty redundant and repetitive for a lot of what they already have.
shoots right.
Right? He's a right-handed, shoot-first, high-motor guy with limited playmaking. Him and MBN are very comparable players. I mean, but beyond Danielson and Max Plant, I look at this system and I don't see a lot of playmakers. So even if your prospect system pans out as good as you can expect, between MBN and Buchelnikov, and if it's Eklund and like DeBrincat's still there, and who's getting them the puck? These guys can't all have their puck on their stick 24/7, right? Like, what's that mix there? Now, that being said, if you are a best player at all costs type of draft philosophy, yeah, Eklund's probably going to be your guy if he gets there, unless some really crazy things happen. If you're more the team building aspect of it, you might end up running the risk of getting a little too cute with it, and you take a much weaker player. So I personally think there's a reality where you can have this many cooks in the kitchen in terms of like shooters and redundant similar types. But you better be damn well sure the centers that are playing between them can do everything you need them to do, which Kasper looks like he can be that guy. Book's still out on Danielson. Larkin, God knows how long he can hang on for. So it's not without questions, but that's not Eklund's fault at all.
Talking about the player specifically, I personally am running to the stage. I think this guy's top 10 talent. I think, like what you said, Brad, is exactly right. Like, the compete is through the roof. Does not play like a small player. It's not like he's like a miniature player by any means. He's close to 6 feet. I think he's an inch off or so. Can shoot. He kind of does everything. He has NHL pedigree. He's the younger brother of William Eklund, who Brad had at the top of his list in a previous year of draft profiles. So, I mean, I love everything Eklund does. And early on, there was conversations about which Swede would be ranked higher, Frondell or Eklund. And I still don't think it's insane to see that flip the other way come draft time. Not likely, but it's a possibility. Stealing a little bit from what we're about to talk about, which is our own personal, like, within reason rankings for Detroit at pick 13. I think like you can have too much of a good thing. You have too many guys who profile like what Eklund can be if he hits. Like Kasper, I understand it's a different position. Like MBN, if he hits, that's great. Love to have that issue. You know how many teams need right shots who can do that, who can compete like crazy and play that kind of Marco Kasper style game that teams are coveting left, right, and center? Awesome. So at that point, you walk up to the stage and you're like, yeah, we'll have to figure this out, but you can do a lot worse. I'd rather walk away with the talent than figure it out later. And I think Victor Eklund is the talent. I'd be surprised if he makes it to 13, but I'd be thrilled he's at the top of my list of who could potentially be there.
I honestly couldn't say it better myself. That's exactly how I feel about it. At 13, he's too much talent to be leaving on the boards. Obviously, there's the caveat of who else is there, but for me, if we're going to do the top 5 of our choice or whatever, Eklund would be number 1 for me. I like everything he does. He's involved in every play, even though he's considered small, but I think him and I look each other in the eyes. So, yeah. Do the Red Wings need a shoot-first guy? Probably not. Not right now, but you can't be leaving talent like that on the board at 13 if you're the Red Wings.
Okay, so we're going to talk about more players here, but now that we've reached pick 13, let's give our own personal, let's say, top 5, unless you're inspired to go more, of who you would pick if they were there for the Red Wings at pick 13. So, we're not going to put Hagens down at 13, but I think it'd
be nice if he was there. My goodness.
If they could do us that favor, that'd be a great way to make a pick 13 draft stream, get the viewing numbers of a pick 4 draft stream. And it could be McQueen, it could be Mertka. Like, I think those are very reasonable. Aitchison, of course, but like, who would you actually take within the realm of reality?
So of the guys where I think there's at least a reasonable possibility they get to 13, my 5 preferences would be, in order, Cole Reshny, Victor Eklund, Roger McQueen, Justin Carbonneau, Carter Bear.
Okay.
Mine are very similar to that, and I'm trying to exclude the guys who won't be there. It starts to get a little confusing at like the 7 to 8 range on who could drop, and it's all going to be premeditated on if defensemen start going. But with that being said, my choice would be Victor Eklund. I think if he's dropping, that's the guy you're going to take. My number 2 would be Jackson Smith if he's there. Once again, it all depends on if defensemen start going on a run. 3 for me, this is where I kind of get into the group of everybody else. This one will be, but at the top of that group for me is Cole Reshny, and then I've got Carter Bear, and then doesn't even matter at that point.
He couldn't bring himself to say Carbona.
No,
I was thinking about it so bad.
Do you think in the current geopolitical climate, Evan is going to drop a war that he has with an entire region? Evan versus the province of Quebec, that war is raging on right now.
It's the flavor of the year right now. I may as well stick to it.
The best part is the way Carbonneau plays. If his name was Dave Smith and he was from Saskatoon, he would have been at the top of Evan's list.
His name could be Justin Carbonneau, but if he played in any other league, I would be all for it.
I have in terms of what's reasonable, and I'll qualify this with I have McQueen in my pie in the sky list, so I don't actually think he'll fall there. But I understand that you think he could be, and that's why he was on your list, Brad. But I have Eklund first, and then I'm with you on Reshny. I am. I think there's just a little bit more projectability, but you can absolutely, with enough time, convince me of Reshny over Eklund. But for me, I have to stick with my gut, and that's Eklund. We're going to talk about him still. Carter Bear, for me, is number 3. I think Carter Bear is probably not getting enough attention. We're looking a lot at the defensemen who have a lot of the superlatives or the traits that we're looking for, but Carter Bear could be a great, great player. And then I get into, is Mertka going to be there? Maybe not, but for the sake of it, I'll go Mertka, Smith. What order? Could be convinced either way. And then Carbonneau and Aitchison, probably interchangeable for me as well. So I still have Eklund over Reshny. If McQueen's there, he might leap to the top of the list for me.
We need to do like a gun to the earth. Who are your top 2 or top 3? Because when you get to 5, it's like,
doesn't matter.
There's like 8 guys at this range that I could potentially take, and because there's so much volatility in the 6+ range of the draft, it's like I'll take any of these guys.
So, okay, is McQueen in the realm of possibility for you?
I think so, but I think Anaheim is super interested in him, and I just don't think he's going to be there.
Okay, let's exclude McQueen. Gun of the earth, top 2.
Top 2, Victor Eklund and Jackson Smith.
I have Victor Eklund, Cole Reshny.
I have Cole Reshny, Victor Eklund.
I will say, I think.
Oh, because you don't think Jackson Smith's going to be there.
I was going to say, I think Evans is the most realistic in terms of what GMs would say, and I also think Evans probably more correct than people give him credit for or assume, because Jackson Smith's not talked about enough. But I think he's going to go earlier. All right, we talked about Carter Bear a lot. Who's Carter Bear as a prospect, and why is he on our lists?
Highly competitive, physical, talented. Asterisk winger. Lot to love about his game. I like his playmaking. I love his goal scoring ability. I love his tenacity. I love his physical game. The 2 concerns I have with him are, 1, the injury. Should be fine, but that's a hell of an injury to come back to. And 2, for a late birthday, his production wasn't great. It was good. It was very good for an 18-year-old in the dub. But it wasn't special. Like, if you look at just guys available in this range, true 17-year-olds, Cole Reshny and Benjamin Kindle outscored him, outpaced him, had better production. So if I'm taking Carter Bear over one of those 2 other guys, it's because I believe in those secondary traits outperforming the other 2 statistical profile. Now, I don't buy into that with Reshny, because I think Reshny's intangibles, his compete, his tenacity are there as well. Hence why I have Reshny ahead of Bear, but Bear ahead of Kindle. But you better be damn sure if you're making that pick. Because again, the Red Wings, we've seen it twice. Late birthdays with good, not great production out of the dub. Rasmussen, we know what happened there. Book's still out on Nate Danielson, and as good as Danielson is, I don't think he's ever going to be an elite scorer at the NHL level. So you got to pick your poison with those type of players. Like, do you believe in the secondary traits being impactful? Not good. We know they're good. We know they're good. We know they're good with Rasmussen, but that doesn't translate to a top 9 forward. It's, are they good enough to maybe make him a good NHL second line player if he's only putting up 50 to 60 points?
I think Sam Bennett is one of the biggest stock inflators for Carter Bear in the draft. I agree with what you guys are saying. Is he the flashiest player? Does he have the ultimate package? I don't think so, but he's tough to play against. He can score. He's got a bit of playmaking ability as well. There's going to be teams who love this type of guy, and as they just watch Sam Bennett win the Conn Smythe, they're going to be like, this is the guy that we can get, and we think once we make the playoffs, he's just going to take it to another level, and I wouldn't be shocked to see this guy go in the top 10.
Partial laceration of the Achilles. So Brad's not wrong. Like that's a big one, but he is confident, and they've put out like they expect a full recovery. They don't expect any kind of debilitating or lasting effect there. So until you see it, you never know. But of course, that is something you have to pay attention to. Speaking of, like, not the same kind of player, but like you said, Brad, there's questions about why they were able to achieve what they were able to achieve, and can their secondary traits make an impact? Justin Carbonneau, another late birthday. We meme on this show about Evan and the QMJHL and stats being inflated, but that's always going to be on your mind with the QMJHL. Another right shot, phenomenal shot, maybe one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in the draft in some people's minds. Do you believe in Carbonneau to be the guy who can make an impact?
Listen, I say here, and I go on this spiel about Carter Bear and the physicality and the intangibles and the late birthday, but is the production actually sustainable? Now I got to add all that plus the Q for Carbonneau, because I like what I see. I don't think there's much playmaking there, but again, the tenacity, the 200-foot game, the shot, this is just Victor Eklund light, but bigger. And you can almost make the same argument for Bear. Replace size for speed. But it's a Q. God, would I be scared drafting him 13th overall? I would like it, but I would be nervous because, again, the production was good. Borderline great, but not special for a third-year QMJHL player.
How many times have we said, God, this guy from the Q, if he hits, he's going to be a power forward? And that's already a rare thing in the NHL. But Red Wings fans, any fan of a team that has had Ken Holland as GM has been hurt by this before. But then that player ends up being not a power forward. And that's almost unfair to Justin Carbonneau, because you watch the game he plays, and yeah, you have to factor in the fact that he's a late birthday and going to be more physically developed than his peers. But he plays the kind of game where you're like, that can translate and should translate more often than other kind of archetypes. So I like Carbonneau's game, and that's why he was listed in my top 5 to 7. I think some things are working against him that are absolutely not his faults, and that's why other players are ranked ahead. But I'm not upset if they're taking Carbonneau. I'm actually thrilled because I get to watch Evan's reaction to someone from the Q being drafted.
Yeah, he can score goals. That's great. Is he big? Yeah, he's big. Does he play in the Q? And I don't draft anyone out of the Q because it's a soft league and it's just a point merchant league. Yeah, I'm not drafting anyone in the Q. Caleb Denoye, gone. Sorry, you're out. Better luck next year.
Caleb Denoye is there at 13.
I just gone. Don't care. Don't care. You see who wants to pick at 13 and you acquire assets. It sounds ridiculous, but it's just a league I'm not interested in drafting players from. I have the WHL on the exact opposite side.
I can't wait until Carbonneau wins Rookie of the Year now.
You know why he won't draft? Because could you imagine Evan walking up to the stage as an NHL general manager and saying, from the...
Yeah, I can't say that team.
Blainville, Boisbriand, Armada. That's not a real place. Justin C.
Who was it? Was it Carey Price who botched his?
Yeah, but he just
David
froze.
Reinbacher,
He forgot who David Reinbacher was.
You would make Carey Price so happy because you would be that'd be the viral moment. You'd be, whose parents was it that were like making out when he got drafted? You'd be more viral than that.
Oh God. Oh God.
The viral moment would be him reading the card, staring at the name, and then getting hot mic'd under his breath. This effing province.
Wouldn't even be on the card because it wouldn't even be an option.
Cole Reshny, we've talked about him a lot, but for the sake of his profile today, why is he near the top of our list?
I'm going to give you a breakdown on this player, and for anybody who hasn't listened to me talk about Cole Reshny before, you'll probably be able to guess the part I'm leaving out. This is a 200-foot forward, high compete, high motor, aggressive, great goal scorer, elite playmaking, good, not great skating, hockey IQ through the roof, one of the smartest players in this draft. Production increased dramatically as the season went on, got better as the season went on for Evan in the WHL. Got to the WHL playoffs on a good, not great team, a team not expected to do much. They win the first round. He's leading the charge. They take the Spokane Chiefs, who are a powerhouse in that league, to 6 games in the second round. They shouldn't have even been in the second round, and they should have got wiped by Spokane, but they take a couple games from them. 25 points in 11 playoff games. There is nothing about this guy's game I don't like. He plays with pace. He plays with tenacity. He's aggressive. He's skilled. He can score. He can pass. Ryan, say the line. Why is he not a top 5 pick?
Small.
If this guy was 6'2", he's a top 5 pick all day, every day, but he's 5'10"-ish, and that is going to scare the hell out of teams, because have we learned nothing from Braden Point? Like, my comparable for Reshny's style of game, not necessarily to this extreme, is Brad Marchand. That archetype of small forward who's not an elite skater, but not slow, but is just so damn good and so aggressive, it doesn't matter. Now, he's a center, Marchand's a winger, so it's not a one-to-one comparison, but there's only 2 other guys that I have ever got on my soapbox like this hard for over the course of a draft prospect, where I said, I don't care that they're small, they're that good. And the other 2, you'll remember, were Lucas Raymond and Logan Stankoven. I'm getting all the same vibes from Reshny. Like, he is being pushed down because of his size, no pun intended. And I don't get it.
Cole Reshny is, like, I would play devil's advocate here, but I'm sold on the exact same things. And especially when you consider, like, I'm not a believer that his floor is high. I think his floor is bust. Like, I think he's one of those players where the size could be the issue despite everything Brad just listed. I wouldn't bet on it, but you'd be crazy to say that that's not a possibility. But for me, if you're at pick 13 and you're not using that pick to trade up or out or something with a bold move, I see Reshny as a bold move, because you're betting on what Brad just mentioned. If he ends up being the kind of player that his archetype is dictating he could be, that is a huge hit on skill. That is a top 10 talent all day, every day, if he makes it. And at pick 13, you're always saying if he makes it. Like, it's just not a question, really, in any other situation. So Cole Reshny is that bet on talent. You can go more boring and get a player who's going to be productive for you, but you want to make a big swing, he could be a huge revelation for your team.
Well, we always talk about, like, showing up against the best of the best, or like sort of the check boxes that players need to check off to be considered a top prospect, right? And it's, how did they perform in the regular season in their league, the playoffs, the U18s, and the World Juniors? And Cole Reshny's done nothing but, double check these boxes. Like, it's just been a complete dominance at all of these events. And there's so many prospects you can't say that about. Like, he is just peaking at the absolute right time. So totally agree with what you guys said. I'm curious how his skating holds up at the next level, and his shot, I think, leaves a lot to be desired still, but there's some tantalizing skill that he possesses. And if the Red Wings took him at 13, I'd have no issues with that. I really just can't get a read on what teams are thinking about him right now, because everything just seems all over the place with him.
And one Red Wings specific point that I didn't make with him, and we probably should mention it more because the Red Wings are probably one of the very, very few teams whose forward group is right shot heavy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a lefty.
Yeah.
So he does fill a need there, even if you want to push him to the wing.
All right. Now, very quickly, we won't go fully in depth, but we would be remiss in not mentioning these guys. I think Lyndon Lakovic is going to be a guy who's in the mix who a lot of people are talking about. Braden Coots, Cullen Potter, Cameron Reed. You can get into Nesbitt. You can get into Ben Kindle. There's plenty of other players that we have to consider that are very well possibilities. Anyone jumping out at you that you would say, not in terms of your rankings, but you should have Red Wings fans looking out for because he's fits what they're looking for?
Lyndon Lakovic, because big Anthony Mantha vibes, but we can deal with that later. I haven't seen him mock to Detroit, but just knowing what Detroit likes, I could see Cam Reed being on their radar. He's not huge, but a smart, high hockey IQ defenseman who can skate. That would be appealing to them. Kindle, if they really want to take a swing, I feel like that's rich. Braden Coots, if they feel like he can be Travis Konechny. I'd be surprised if they're looking super hard at anybody else in that range, which means I've just doomed us all to them picking one of those guys for sure.
No, you doomed them to Joshua Ravensburg, the goaltender.
Please no.
And then we are going to see just how many panes are on these new windows in the studio. Very fast.
Well, if you don't get through all of them on the first try, I'll finish it off for you. Don't worry.
Oh, I assumed you'd beat me there. Okay, we did rankings. Now let's talk predictions. What do you think actually happens? Assume they are keeping pick 13, no matter what. And if you think there's a possibility of a trade, then you can give that too. But no matter what,
what are my options?
Give your prediction on what's going to happen at pick 13, assuming Detroit keeps it.
Who the Red Wings take? That's a great question. I think if Victor Eklund's sitting there, if they pass on Victor Eklund, Hakan Andersson has told them something and is like, do not draft.
Yeah.
But if he's there, I think that's their guy. If the board kind of just falls as it is, I think the Red Wings do look for a left-handed defenseman, or they try and go best player available. And at that point, I think it's a bit of a fool's errand trying to guess who the Red Wings would take.
It's hard because, if I had to give a percentage of would they be there, Eklund, I'd say more likely to not be there. Aitchison, I'd say more likely to not be there. But I agree those would be the guys that are more likely. Jackson Smith, more likely to not be there. Like, those are the three biggest names that, to me, jump out as the Red Wings pick. I'm going to land on Aitchison here. And not because I think they like him necessarily more than Eklund or Jackson Smith. I just think if I had to bet which of those three that fit the profile of what Detroit's looking for is most likely to be there, I guess it'd be Aitchison. So if I had to pick exactly one name, it'd be Aitchison because Eklund and Jackson Smith went prior.
I hear people talking about Aitchison going to the Rangers a lot.
Pittsburgh too.
Rangers might not keep that pick, though. They're the big wild card. They have to make a decision whether they're giving that to Pittsburgh or they're keeping it. And that's honestly a huge wild card because that swings in my mind what Pittsburgh's going to do.
This draft's going to be interesting, I think. There's lots of intrigue in the top three with what the Islanders are going to do. And then there's a lot of cascading effects that happen with other picks. There's going to be a lot of volatility, and hopefully it's a super interesting one. Hopefully we see some picks getting traded that actually are of substance.
I hope so. Brad, your prediction before we get back into that.
The problem is my prediction is predicated on what the Rangers do, because I think Pittsburgh's going defense, but I think if they have both picks, they're going to go defense and forward. If I'm the Rangers and I see what's happening, I'm giving Pittsburgh this pick because I'm not taking the chance on McKenna. So I'm going to assume Pittsburgh's picking both, which then makes my prediction for the Red Wings Jackson Smith. Because I think all the smoke around Aitchison, I don't think he's getting close to Detroit. I'd be surprised if he got past, 10 feels optimistic, but he won't get past Pittsburgh, I don't think.
Who do you guys think might be the shock of the draft, the Moritz Seider pick, and maybe what team would consider doing it if you know that much about the team's needs or their draft philosophy?
It'll be Detroit. I'm trying to think. All the other teams that are picking ahead of them usually go chalk.
Could be Utah with Brady Martin, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think 4. I really love Brady Martin as a player, but I think 4 would be rich for him.
That's the one I was thinking about as well.
I could see a team really believing in Roger McQueen and him going top 5.
I could see Nashville doing it. I could absolutely see Nashville doing that.
So,
I'll go with the second pick. If the Rangers keep their pick, my prediction's Carter Bear.
So those are the predictions. Now let's get into like what could happen. It's the NHL. Most likely scenarios that everyone just makes their picks at the top end don't happen a lot. But this year there's a lot of noise, and it starts with the Islanders wanting Hagens presumably, but they have the first overall pick, and that's should be Schaefer or Misa. Do you think they go Hagens? Do you think they try to trade down? Do you think they try to trade for a second pick in the top 4? Maybe. Like, where do you see that one going?
Schaefer. I don't think they're going to overthink it.
No?
I don't think they're going to I would love for them to overthink it for the entertainment value. I think it's just going to be Schaefer.
I think if the Islanders pick James Hagens purely based on the fact that a former first overall pick left because they went to their hometown team, that's like, what are we doing here? Like Bush League level executive decisions being made. You need to take the best player available or who you perceive to be the best player, and you do not make a pick based on where someone was born and who their favorite team was growing up.
If the Islanders are sold on Hagens, I think that's okay. But then you better get on the phone with Chicago or Utah to get something else for it to make up that value gap. And if you're Chicago or Utah and you can get Misa or Schaefer, you do the trade. But that high in the draft, those value questions could be interesting.
Subjective, to say the least.
Now let's talk trade for Red Wings. Who are you trading up for? Do you consider trading down? Or are you trading this pick overall and you're not even picking at pick 13 this year because you want to make a move for, JJ Peterka or as part of a Robertson deal or something else?
If it's Robertson, I'm trading the pick. If it's Peterka, I'm thinking about it. But in the trade world, I don't know anybody else other than those two that I would give up pick 13 for. I would trade up. Well, there's a lot of guys that if they're there, you trade up for. I think the one that's reasonable would be Jake O'Brien. I am willing to trade back, but that's me because I think you can get Reshny at 15, 16, 17. So I would more than happily trade back and take that gamble to get him. Beyond that, the NHL is boring. They're probably just going to pick 13, take the best player available. But the Red Wings are unique in the sense that they're not a good team yet. Their farm system's pretty well stocked at every position. Like, they don't have a glaring hole at wing or center, right D, left D, goalie in their system. Yeah, some positions are stronger than others, but you can look down the depth chart and go, yeah, that could be a guy. Yeah, that's a dude. So they have the luxury of going best player available, which then adds it makes sense to trade up, or it makes sense to trade back, or it makes sense to just trade the pick. The Red Wings, because the Red Wings have been a joke of a team for 10 years, it now gives them the luxury of doing whatever the hell they want. Everything makes sense, provided they're getting a good player. Like, if they trade back and they take, a Kindle, a Lakovic, a Reed, Reshny, great. If you trade up and you get a O'Brien or a Martin, great. But if you trade up and you pick, Lakovic or it's just a mistake. If you trade it for K-Andre Miller, it's a mistake. Like, you can do whatever you want. Just get the good player. Get the best player you can with that pick, full stop.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with, at this point, just making a trade with the pick. Now, I do think because it's so unlikely to trade up in the draft, that's why I talk often about use this pick to go get a Peterka or some blockbuster for Robertson or for a player who's worth it. I'm not sold on the first agreed for K-Andre Miller. I'm kind of out once he gets there. But there's a lot of players out there in this presumably crazy trade market, and especially as free agency plays out, where that you want to be able to kind of get those guys. So if you can make pick 13 part of a deal to peel a good player off a team like Buffalo or whoever, absolutely, I'm all over that. Now, sidecar, but somehow less likely, is trading up, like Brad said, for an O'Brien or a Denoyer, or depending on how high up you get. You have so many really great prospects. You have so many really good to great players. You need to try to accelerate things now because you're looking at a window of time where Larkin is still playing some of his best hockey, if not, close to prime in terms of performance. Athletic prime differs slightly, but you know what I mean. That window's not going to last forever. So if you can accelerate this, and if that means getting a player of extreme talent that can be ready sooner, or going out and getting an NHL ready player, I'm kind of just in favor of trading pick 13. But it doesn't mean I'm upset if they're walking away with an Eklund or another top 10 talent because of the way the board shook out. Trade back. You can never say don't do it. There's very few situations where you're like, yeah, that's absolutely insane to do. It's just boring. But of course, it's an opportunity. So based on how weak this year's draft is, I'm kind of looking for opportunities to trade if it was up to me.
Also depends on how hot other teams come in too, right? Like if anyone else in the NHL really is hot on somebody at 13 and they're willing to give up a second and you don't have to move all that far back, then why not? Add another second. We've seen guys fall out of the first round that people have been absolutely shocked to see there. So lots of options for the Red Wings in this draft.
And acquiring a second round pick is a great way to get rid of a contract.
Wow, I hate you. All right. As you can tell, this is a mega episode, longer one than usual. So we are actually going to take another quick break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. More after this. That is our 2025 NHL Draft Preview. Again, plenty more on these prospects next episodes. We're doing our final mock draft and roundtable, and we'll see what news comes out in this next little while. It's officially the witching hour, not just for Yzerman, but the entire NHL. Let's get into some NHL news before overtime. Mason Marchment was a guy who we talked about a lot as a potential addition for the Red Wings. It was one of those situations where he might be a depth addition for some teams, but for the Red Wings could be a solution higher up in the lineup for now, not long term. Ended up going to Seattle for a 2025 fourth round pick and a 2026 third round pick. So a cheap price for Seattle. Granted, Marchment doesn't have a lot of control. He's 30. He's in the last year of his contract, and so he's going to need another contract if he's going to stay. So you're buying 1 year of Mason Marchment, but a third and a fourth is all it took. So I think that's a shrewd move for Seattle, and I'm going to say it honestly, not just a deal I would have liked for the Red Wings. There's a lot of other teams who are saying, oh, well, we would have liked to have done that deal. There is the notion going around that Seattle and another no-tax state, and Jim Nill is big on that kind of thing, so that he was trying to do right by Marchment.
Well, that's the theory that makes sense to me, is there were probably higher offers out there, and it's why organizations like Dallas are able to lure players. The no tax and the weather thing's great, but the more often than not, when the GMs do right by players, it'll play future dividends for them.
Chris Drury's in shambles right now.
I saw that and I was like, oh, God, I would have. It's not like Marchment would have fixed everything, but you're like, yeah, you don't even think about that cost at this point. Edmonton making waves. I mean, there's a lot on, Florida and their cup celebrations, but Edmonton making waves based on two things. One of them, and I think the lesser of the two, which is funny, is Trent Frederick's contract, which is a colossal deal. What was it 8 years, $4 million for Trent Frederick?
Even I would live in Edmonton for that kind of contract.
Whatever the number ends up being, you're getting the guy at $3.5 to $4.5 million, but for 8 years. And it begs the question: is it silly to do, considering Edmonton has cap structure issues, which has been holding them back from competing for so long? Or are you like, well, what's $4 million now compared to 3 years from now? And Trent Frederick is a good, solid player in the depth of your lineup. And if you can keep his number low by, controlling it that way, then you do it. I'm kind of two minds on it, but I was like, it is just funny. A team that has cap structure issues immediately goes and signs max term for a depth player.
Well, there's always concessions to be made in negotiations. You know, we saw the Leafs do it with Chris Tanev last year where, okay, sometimes you have to eat it on term to get a better AAV. And if you're in your window now and you can get a guy on a lower AAV, okay, that's fine. And you deal with the back half of the contract when it comes. And Frederick's not that old, but he's not that young. So did the Oilers have to give up a lot on term? Yes. Did they have to give up a lot on AAV? Also, yes. Did they save a lot of room for Connor McDavid's pending extension? No. Did they do a lot to appease Connor McDavid to stay? Also, no. Did Connor McDavid's press conference inspire a lot of confidence that he's going to stay in Edmonton? Also, no. Stan Bowman's back, baby.
I don't know that, Capway just has it at 3.85. That's a lot of AAV that it's going to fade into, that's going to be a going rate. If he's an everyday depth player, that's going to kind of be the going rate for the ones who are notable, in my mind.
By percent of cap, it's not going to be that big of an increase for depth players. But we talked about this when the cap was going up. When you look at percent of cap, depth players on a huge cap increase, they maybe go up $500,000, if that, generously over the next, 3, 4, 5 years. But GMs will not look at it that way. They'll be like, no, this $2 million player is totally worth $4 million players because that's how the cap works. And here's one of your first examples of it. He had 4 points in the playoffs?
Well, okay, let's talk about Connor McDavid, because previously I'd say there's no way Connor McDavid's leaving. Leon Draisaitl's best friend is there, signed forever now, extended, and he seems to be the classic legacy guy, good old, number one pick, wants to win with the team that took him kind of thing. But his presser, when he was asked about an extension, he was like, yeah, of course there's unfinished business and I want to win here, and I love Edmonton. But then he said something like, but at the end of the day, I have to talk to my family, my agent, and figure out what's right for me and see if there's an opportunity to win here in a window. And I was like, that is the first time where I was like, oh, they might not have this guaranteed. And emotions run high after losing the Cup finals the second time. A collective 3 wins is the difference between 2 cups or none for McDavid. But that wasn't nothing. And it's kind of a warning shot to Edmonton's brass to say, you have to figure this out. We can't be having a question of goaltending every single season and whatever else is implied in there. You could see Connor McDavid make the biggest offseason in modern NHL history next year. It's not out of the realm of possibility now. And this is coming from me who thought sub 10% chance maybe not too long ago.
I think if I'm Connor McDavid in this situation, there's no way I'm interested in a super long-term deal. I think if I'm Connor McDavid and I want to win and I want to do it at Edmonton, I take shorter term deals because you need to keep that front office kind of worried that you may leave at some point, because if they know you have 8 years, listen, people do their homework on the night it's due. Let's be honest. They need to always have the fear that Connor McDavid could leave this team at any point. And maybe that leads to them making some actual intelligent decisions. Maybe that makes them go out and get a bona fide starting goaltender. Because I think if Connor McDavid signs there long term, it's going to be a lot of the same old.
The Edmonton management crew lives in constant fear that one day Connor McDavid figures out, with the money he's making, he can afford a heated driveway at his new residence, and even more screwed when they find out that there's a bunch of teams in the NHL where you don't even need a heated driveway, in which case he's all but gone.
He'll do it anyways just to flex. Look, you can't blame him, right? It's not like Connor McDavid's playing on a team that has all the tools but just can't put it together, and then it's more on the players than the roster. Not that he's without blame on any given game, but if you're going to look at that team and say Connor McDavid is the problem, you're just not being serious. You have Darnell Nurse making $9.25 million for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. That contract was bad the moment it was signed. you have not had a starting goalie solidified in the entire time that team has been competitive. But you have the other pieces that make it so you should be able to. You have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, two of the best players on the planet. You have Zach Hyman on a great number. You have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins putting up unreal numbers at a great number. We'll see what they do with Evander Kane. He might be moved. I mean, Sneaky could be an option for Detroit, however
No,
you
thank
feel
you.
about it. I would not be surprised, honestly.
No, thank you.
But they just make so many boneheaded errors with their cap structure where you're like, you have to figure something out. And the lowest hanging fruit, like, stop ignoring the goalie. How many years between Edmonton and Toronto where they've not solved their goalie issue was that the problem for them in the playoffs?
Well, would you rather have Trent Frederick or Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway?
And St. Louis, did they do a number by capitalizing on Edmonton's bad cap situation because they have guys like Darnell Nurse at 9.25? There's so much, like, Nurse took a lot of heat, especially early on, for not performing to the level of that contract, and Edmonton was a little indignant about it, but it's not wrong. Like, he's not worth it, and that's what's stopping them from going out and getting the guy that they need. Like, Anaheim's asking price on Gibson is very high, so it's not like they could have just had him for free with no cap retention. Like, Anaheim wanted first-round pick, prospect, and no cap retention on Gibson. But if a guy like Gibson was available and you liked him, you should have been able to make that work without, trying to galaxy brain things. You're not building around the elite talent that you have. I have no faith that Stan Bowman is going to be the guy to do it. He doesn't exactly have a good track record. I understand he's not the only one making decisions in Edmonton's front office, but yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. I can see Connor McDavid keeping them on their toes with those shorter contracts.
And he maximizes his earning potential, which I don't think he totally cares about because every team will give him max dollars wherever he would want, but it keeps some flexibility for the player as well.
And for him, you have to be a little pissed off. Not that you're scoffing at $12.5 million, but he could have had well over $12.5 million on this contract that's ending now. And he took less to say, build around me.
Yeah.
And they failed. Look, for the sake of the entertainment, I hope they fail him. But
they're well on their way.
We might need that monkey paw on the table after all, because if he goes to Toronto somehow,
after all the stuff coming out of South Florida about the people chanting F McDavid and all that stuff, we're about to see the greatest regular season in NHL history. Connor McDavid's going to have 5,000 points.
Not this season, next season, while he's playing for Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Unironically, that could be what drives him there. He's a spiteful guy. He's driven by anger, absolutely. Talk about South Florida.
It's underwater right now, except it's 50% alcohol.
Just 50. They must be cooling off. They hit a little hair of the dog the next day. Those cup celebrations have been so funny. I think Brad Marchand going and tagging every team who gave up.
That was hilarious.
Brad Marchand, like, that's the difference between Corey Perry and Brad Marchand. Corey Perry is a heel. Brad Marchand's a heel, but he's getting the people to love him. He's the people's heel. The funniest one for me was when they tagged the Flames on Tkachuk. I was like, they didn't want to get rid of Tkachuk. They were like, we know. We didn't want this to happen either. How do you think we feel? And he's out there. He's wearing like the Oilers logo where it says losers. He's saying like, go Bill Zito, give me a contract. He's commenting under someone saying that we don't see how he doesn't end up a Leaf. Some talking head said that. He commented, he's like, shit, boys, should I do it? Like, he's just maximum bullshit out there.
I love it.
All while finding part-time hours at Dairy Queen.
Like, literally since Perma-Drunk Ovi, we have not had better cup celebration content.
No, the videos of Brad Marchand at the clubs coming out are... They're Ovi levels of, oh my God, this guy's on another planet right now.
Yeah, if he stops drinking, the collective hangover may kill him.
I saw he was wearing, I think it was at the parade, he was wearing a crown, so I can only imagine he has been crowned the Rat King.
Unbelievable. Like, the whole other cup celebrations are for the winning team. Like, don't read into it. And like, I think, Tkachuk's comments, I'm like, geez, God, these guys are so annoying when they win, but it's not for you. It's for the Panthers fans. Like, yeah, it is what it is, but Marchand's stuff has been so good. Also, Bennett bringing the Conn Smythe to a humane society and 50% off, adoption of cats. I think, like, it's cool when people do cool stuff with their platform as well. See Barkov at his neighbor's house, like, smashing the Ring doorbell like 50 times at 5 a.m.
Wasn't the backstory like his neighbor was like oh, I heard you guys were out last night. He's like, oh yeah, like sorry, I didn't want to wake you up. We just want to stay in the cup. He's like, well, next time you do, come ring my doorbell.
Yeah,
and
like
apparently he remembered it.
a year later.
A year later, crazy.
You asked for this.
Yeah, crazy.
No, the best part of the whole celebration. Did you guys see the video of Sam Reinhart when he was doing that working at Raising Cane's thing?
Yes.
Every time there was a bright light in front of him,
He had the googly eyes.
he couldn't even open his eyes. He was so hungover. The guy's a trooper. I'll give him that. But oh man, forget playing through the injury in the Cup Finals. That was his ultimate tough guy performance to be able to power his way through that.
There's so much else that's happening in the NHL right now, like rumors of Rasmus Anderson maybe being available for trade, Dobson as well. The reports out there of Detroit making an offer, that's not, like, that was never actually reported, but you have to assume Detroit would be in on Dobson. Marner, maybe also a guy who's looking at short-term deals. We'll save that for later. Nyes and Tavares aren't close to being signed yet by Toronto. That'll be for maybe next episode as we do free agency preview and stuff. One more player, Jonathan Toews, agrees to a contract with Winnipeg. And we talked about him as like, yeah, I mean, if Detroit wants to take a look, maybe on a vet minimum contract, if he plays 50 games and Winnipeg makes the playoffs, that contract is $5.25 million.
That's absurd, right?
Like on a games played bonus, that's bonkers.
Yes. He could be a terrible player, but good enough for the fourth line, play 50 games. They should make the playoffs based on their team. And let's see what happens with the Ehlers and who they replace him with. And you're paying him $5.25 for not much. It could turn out great. He could be a Patty Kane 2.0. That's a big bet.
But he could be awful. And if there's enough injuries in front of him in the lineup, they have no choice but to play him. Like,
if Detroit signed that contract, I would have been pissed.
On one end of the spectrum, we have Florida Panthers players who are like kiboshing the salary cap, saying they'll sign for $1, give me a contract. On the other hand, we have Jonathan Toews making potentially $5 million.
Sam Bennett making his agent cry by doing the "I'm not effing leaving" thing.
Yeah.
And then Toews takes the hometown markup contract.
Yes.
Ruined the feel-good story about Jonathan Toews signing for his hometown team after coming back from a couple years off because of, was it long COVID complications? God, this is why I hate the salary cap. It takes a feel-good story and makes me upset.
Oh, I'm not upset. I think it still feels good. It's out of Detroit's conference and
makes Nikolai Ehlers a little bit more available.
That's true. That's a positive for the Red Wings.
Like 5.25.
When did he last play? What was his last active year in the NHL?
About 100 years ago.
That's what it feels like.
Was he been gone for 3 seasons?
Was he even 2023 feels like the last time he played a game, and I feel like that might be too recent.
Jonathan Toews last played a game 2022-2023. He played 53 games that season.
And I think playing might be a generous term.
Yeah, he was pretty bad towards the end there.
He was struggling, though. I'll give him a pass on how bad he was that year because of the reason. It's the reason he didn't play the next 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have nothing against Winnipeg for doing it. I think it's really cool to bring back the hometown kid for sure. So it's just funny that I'm glad that's not Detroit. Okay. Long episode. We're going to take one more break here and when we're back, the final segment here on this episode of the Wing Wheel Podcast.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, the bonus episodes, the Discord, the giveaways, all of that and lots more are some of the benefits that you get. And you allow us to do things like make this show bigger and better. We have a lot coming in the pipeline. You allow us to work on more content. Expected by Whom is a show hosted by Prashanth Iyer and Sean Shapiro. That's in our world. You allow us to support the Jamie Daniels Foundation through initiatives like Wing Wheel Podcast Nights at the LCA and at Vin Andel Arena in partnership with the Red Wings and the Griffins. All that and lots more. So again, patreon.com/winged wheel podcast. Speaking of Prashanth, his If I Were Steve Yzerman series for this year is out, parts 1 and 2. Always, always, always an excellent read from our very own Prashanth Iyer. 155 Taters says 13th overall is a premium piece based on talent, fit, need, and age. In my opinion, the only 2 popular trade targets I'd give up, number 13-4, are Robertson and Peterka. Do you agree, or would you add any other players to that list?
No, I'm in full agreement right there.
Not Rossi, not Byram?
Nope.
Not Rasmus Anderson?
Definitely no.
I think I'm adding at least Rossi and Byram.
I'd consider Rossi, but some of his demands are questionable in terms of contract and like where are you playing him on the Red Wings? He's demanding to be like a top line, second line center. Well, he's not better than Larkin or Kasper. Could I see him on the first line left wing with Larkin or Raymond? Sure.
If you can sell him
Sure.
on that.
But doesn't seem like you're going to be able to sell him on that. Byram, I'm a little more receptive to. But I just feel like Buffalo's asking price for him within division would be more than 13th overall, which I'm not doing.
What about Rasmus Andersson, let's say with an extension?
No, I understand. I'm in the heavy minority on this one. I'm not a big Rasmus Andersson trade proponent. Not that he's not a good player. I think he's a really good player. I don't think he's as good as his reputation leads him to seem, but also his age, like he's like right at the apex of the, like this guy's about to free fall. Like he's good, but I don't think if you extend him, you're getting any years out of him better than anything he's already played.
Is free fall fair though? Like he's going to be
Free fall's extreme.
29 at the start of the year. You have at least 4 decent years out of him.
Decent, yeah. And I would,
A couple of them very, very good.
but you're not going to be trading for the value of a 31-year-old Rasmus Andersson. You're going to be trading for the value of what Rasmus Andersson did from ages 24 to 28, which he ain't that.
Yeah, just food for thought. Dan Hedin also says, I've been looking at the players that have been rumored to be on the trade block. Where do you draw the line for 13? What level or age do you have to draw the line to keep the draft pick? So we heard from Brad. Evan, what do you think? Are you limited to the couple of guys that were named initially in terms of Robertson and Peterka, or do you go further in terms of Rossi and Byram?
There's probably more names out there than what is mentioned to the media. Obviously, free agency is the biggest sort of reshuffling of assets that we see at the NHL. So there's probably more guys unhappy with their situation or teams are looking to move on from that the Red Wings could leverage. Unfortunately, free agency happens after the draft, so you got to identify those guys early. But I think from a high level, those are the key targets, I'd say.
Amanda Huggenkiss says, which guy in the Red Wings draft do you think would have the quickest path to the NHL, and do you think that would be an important factor on who they pick? It's a good question. So which player that they could reasonably pick would have the quickest path to the league?
Oh, man.
There's not a lot.
I don't
that
know
are
if there's
quick.
anybody there sub 2 years. You know what I mean?
Could be Aitchison.
I don't think so. His game's so raw. I don't think, like, the first name that came to my mind is,
I think Merca has a chance.
Yeah.
I don't think he's getting anywhere near Detroit, though.
But if
I just don't know.
I'm just looking at the physical frames there. McQueen.
With the back in, well, if the back injury truly is no issue, that might be the answer because a late birthday, big body, I could see that. The other one that came to mind is Eklund's supposed to be in the SHL this year. If that goes well and he's a late birthday, maybe he jumps over a little quicker just because he's used to the professional game.
Yep. And he plays the kind of game where you don't really,
Yeah.
the physicality is not going to be a surprise for him.
Yeah. So maybe those are the answers, although I wouldn't call any of those scenarios likely.
Yeah. It's a really good question, though. I just can't imagine at pick 13 that's going to inform your decision. Denny's Gamer Girl says, I find it interesting that Berggren doesn't get the same leniency as other players when it comes to his play last year. It was his second year in the NHL where he played a substantial amount of games, and while his game leaves much to be desired in terms of effort, he shows he can produce and be effective if put with players who are good and not the bottom guys. I think he'd be ashamed to give up on a guy like that now. So I think the answer is in your question is the effort. The warts with his game that they wanted him to work on, and he did make strides here and there in some aspects where, you know, responsibility to the puck, decision-making, not just in the offensive zone, you know, not just transporting the puck, but like not being a defensive liability. Skill guys who can produce on the power play or in opportune moments in the offensive zone, but who have big deficiencies in the other zones. Small, soft on the puck, and effort is an issue. I'm sorry to say, and this is as someone who's rooting for Berggren, dime a dozen in this league.
The problem is he's not good enough to produce offense on his own in the bottom six. And he's not good enough to carry a regular role in the top six.
At least not bolt on.
On a competitive team. Was he better than some of the other options they tried at left wing when Raymond and Larkin were struggling to find a winger. Yeah, he wasn't the worst guy they put there. But if you got Jonathan Berggren in your top 6 on a cup contending team, I hate to break it to you, you're not a cup contending team.
So he could still improve big, but that's why you've seen the progression you've seen with him. Samuel Soderholm says, what player would have you cheering the most if he's picked by Detroit this year? It can be any pick in the draft. I'm going to hazard a guess that it's Reshny for Brad.
I was going to say Michael Misa, but
Yeah.
within the realm of possibility here, yeah, it would be Reshny.
Getting crazy, but not too crazy, McQueen for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't really be cheering for anyone unless someone really drops out of the top 10. I don't know. I'll say Victor Eklund, I guess.
Motown Seider says, if Yzerman were to trade Kosa now, how high of a return could we get? I'm excited for both him and Augustine. I'm just curious how high the stock of Kosa is. Like, could you get Robertson for him, or could you get even more? Thanks. You can have Kosa as a big piece in a deal, like think of the Reinhardt deal, Levi, that kind of thing. I don't think his stock is quite that high, but he has high stock. Goalies are funny. They're not worth anything until a team really needs one at that exact age. I think he's worth a good bit. He could be not the only piece, but a big piece in getting a big return.
What did Askarov go for?
David Edstrom, goalie prospect Magnus Krona, and a conditional first-round pick in this draft, which they previously got from Vegas. If that pick should be in the top 10, which it wasn't, the Sharks would have the choice to transfer either their own, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so a first, Edstrom, and Magnus Krona.
For reference, let's take a really goalie-needy team like the Flyers, who have, 7th overall and a late first-round pick. If you're Philly, are you trading 7th for Kosa?
No.
Are you trading the late first for Kosa?
Yes.
Then your value's somewhere in the middle. So his return is probably right around where he was picked right now.
Below average ball hockey goalie, new patron, thank you so very much. New name level supporter, thank you so much for your support and welcome to Dub Dub Club. Says longtime listener, first time sponsor. If Roger McQueen falls at 13, would you take the risk knowing the injury history selecting him? I believe the Wings are at a point to swing for the fences instead of the responsible two-way type in McQueen, even with the history is worth the swing. Would the cost to move up a few spots to say pick 10 be worth it to get him? I'm there with you. I think he's worth it. You do have to consider why did all these other teams pass on him, but I still think he might be worth it.
Again, it all depends how the board falls, but the overall philosophy there, I couldn't agree with more. The Red Wings have so much depth in their pipeline. Their mentality with this pick should be only looking at upside. That's priority number 1. You don't need more middle 6 forwards. Who's the guy that if everything goes right is an actual impactful top of the lineup player? That's what you're looking at.
All right. That is all for this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. That concludes our 2025 NHL Entry Draft Preview episode. Again, subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, also subscribe. But we're going to have the live stream on Friday. And our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast, get the bonus hangout on Saturday for day 2 of the draft, rounds 2 through 7. So thank you also very much for tuning in. To the sponsors of the show, we cannot thank you enough. And again, to all of our Patreon supporters, this show does not happen without you. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon's not for you, again, subscribe, leave a rating wherever you get your podcasts, the stars, review, the thumbs up, the like, tell a friend about the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever. All of that really helps. And to our name level supporters on YouTube, we could not do this show without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Akefer, THL champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, below average ball hockey goalie, brand new name level supporter. Welcome to the Dub Dub Club. Rain, Dano, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Braden Evans, Thighs and Toes podcast, Butts Carlton, Carl Brutina, Nanoluski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Kip Tira Jr., Marty, Matt Keeler, Mark Hernandez, Matt McKay, Mr. Kuzi, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Podgy713, RA, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortley, that's what I appreciate about you. Wallman's Elite Dancing D. William, brand new name level supporter. Wings fan in Chicago. Iserplan Stan. Aaron Hudson. General Andy Bohannon of the Cheesebag Army. AA Ron, All Motor No Hands. And Stanislavski. Axolotl, Sardine Pelican. Bellingham Acid Balls. Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chris Felinski, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Brown, Pomeranian, Evans, Smooth Marbles, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raitman, Marchies, Pink Pony Club, Marco Kasper, the Task Manager, Matt Keeler, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Peter Swanson, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Steven, that other guy, the Hodag, the Hat 123, Trent Thoreau, our good friend Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, Wolverine on his bed holding a framed Wallman photo, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. See you next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at WingWheelPod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.